Why did the Rams trade their first-round pick? Sean McVay and Les Snead revealed why the Rams made the move. Also, who will the Rams take in the second round tonight? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor. Subscribe to Locked On Rams YouTube channel. Got a lot of new viewers, a lot of new listeners, so if you're new to the pod, definitely hit the subscribe button. Try to get to 17,000 subscribers. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 Sports, SI, Bleacher Report, Dodgers Nation. As always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's entering his 10th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's show, we're going to break down the Rams trade. We're going to continue to react to that. Was it the right move? What could they do in the second round? We're going to talk about all of that. But first, today's episode of Locked On Rams brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Travis. So yesterday, the Rams did what the Rams do. Remember, if your name doesn't start with Jared, you're not getting picked in the first round from the Rams. The Rams ultimately did a deal where they traded the number 26 pick and the 101st pick to the Atlanta Falcons in exchange for the number 46 pick, the number 242nd pick, and a 2026 first round pick.
Yeah.
So the Rams, there were some reports that they were looking to trade up for Ted McMillan. He ultimately goes number 8 to the Carolina Panthers. Some of the other guys on their board, Colston Loveland, Mike Colston Loveland out of Michigan Dream is dead. He goes
early.
10 to the Bears. Tyler Warren goes 14 to the Colts. I said yesterday on the live reaction show that I thought this was a great deal for a lot of different reasons, just because this is a quality draft, but there's not a ton of superstars. And from 26 to 45, I mean, are the players that different from each other based on their upside potential? I think the answer is no to that. But what was your reaction to the Rams making this move?
That it was super, super rammy. That this is what they do, right? That they're incredibly strategic. They know exactly what they want. They know exactly where they place value on certain players. They don't really reach when they don't have to reach. They know what they know, and they believe in their methodology. That's kind of what I saw when they made that trade. I think you're exactly right, Doug. I think this was the player we're going to get at 27 or 26, I should say, is exactly the same player we're going to get in the mid 40s. With the quality of player in this year's draft. Sometimes you have guys that have first round grades and there are 40 of them, and you're getting a first round talent in the second round. Sometimes there's 10 of them and you're taking second and third round guys in the first round. And I think this is the year that is a good example of what I can get at 26, I can get at 47. So why would I pay a 26 price for a 47 talent? I'll just pick 47. Next year's draft could be very different. It could be a lot better. So I think they did a great job. I think that they're going to get some players that will be able to impact the team in the short term. I think that's very exciting. We'll see what they do today. But I really liked it. And for me in particular, I think the thing that is most exciting is the Falcons usually suck, which means that their first round pick could be a pretty good pick. I think the Rams are going to have a pretty good team. I would, if you had to bet, I think the Rams are probably picking somewhere in the 20s, if not higher than that, maybe even in the 30s. And I think if you had to bet, the Falcons are probably picking in the teens or maybe even, closer to the top of the draft than that. So to get 2 whacks at it in the first round next year, I think is very exciting. To get a team that potentially could not be very good. We'll see. Who knows? The NFC South is wild. They're all over the place every single season. But I really like what they did. It's kind of a dud to not have a player to discuss here on Friday morning after the draft, but they got some really good assets, and I think the players that they ultimately do end up getting with picks a little bit later on are going to be about the same level of impact had they picked somebody at 26 last night.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And you mentioned the Atlanta Falcons, and their season could go a lot of different ways. You got a young quarterback of Michael Penix Jr., Bijan Robinson, a lot of talented pieces. You added some defensive guys, but you're absolutely right. I mean, it could be a top 10 pick, could be a top 5 pick, could be in the 20s, 30s. It could go a lot of different ways. I think the Rams, if they stay healthy, you got to feel good about them going from at least 20 to 32, something in that range. But I mean, you look at what the Rams can do now, and to me, it's the flexibility. And this is why I feel like it's a 4D chess move from Les Snead and Sean McVay, because they didn't panic when they weren't able to get their guy that they wanted to trade up for because the cost was too high. And instead, they took advantage of that high cost of trading up and used it against another team. So that was what was so big about it. And you can use that pick for a lot of different things. I mean, if you need to make a trade to get a final piece that could put you over the top. I mean, a couple of years ago, they didn't trade for Christian McCaffrey, but they were in the mix with him. They were in the mix with Brian Burns, guys like that a couple of years ago. You can use that as a trade chip. Or, I mean, the way I started this show yesterday was I said, Arch Manning, you are a Los Angeles Ram, right?
Yeah.
And yes, the Browns, they also picked up an extra pick, so they'll be fighting with the Browns. And hey, if I'm Arch Manning, I'm pulling Eli Manning, and I'm not going to Cleveland under any.
They know how to do it.
But the point remains that even if it's not an Arch Manning, it is a much better quarterback class next season. You got Drew Aller, you got Nussmeier, you got all these different quarterbacks that are better potential fits. But I think that the Rams are definitely up to something. I think Les Snead was cooking yesterday.
Yeah, I like what you said, Doug. I think that's a great point. And that second pick gives them a lot of options. Maybe you make 2 picks. Maybe you take the 2 picks that whatever you have next year to move up and really jump towards the front of the draft and make a big swing. Maybe, to your point, it's a trade before the trade deadline. We know that the Rams are one of the few NFL teams that's pretty active at the NFL trade deadline, and this gives them a chip to play and still have a first-round pick. I think it brings a lot of optionality. And, you know, it's funny, watching the draft last night and seeing some of the other teams do what they do and, you know, kind of have to take some swings, kind of have to try to make some stuff happen. And the Rams, and if you're one of those other teams, you're thinking, okay, you know, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. If you're Jacksonville, they might have just torpedoed Travis Hunter's career just by putting their mojo on him. Who knows what it is? But with teams like the Rams, there are just some teams that when they make moves, you go, yeah, that's probably going to work out. And that's certainly what it felt like.
It certainly did. And I think that if you're a Rams fan, this can't come as too big of a surprise based on what this organization has been doing. It's kind of funny to see Les Snead go from F them picks to stack them picks. And it definitely doesn't feel like what we've seen. But like I said, I think that when you look at this draft, I think that a lot of teams out there, they had their big board and they saw an opportunity to get their guy. But when they didn't, they still kind of went with the best player available, and possibly the Rams could have done the same thing. But instead, you put yourself in a good position. I'm excited to see who they pick up today, because I wouldn't be surprised if who they get at 46 is better than the players that went 20 to 30 in that range, right?
Well, look at what they've been able to do outside of the first round the last few years. You know, they've only had the couple of picks in the last, you know, like you mentioned, there's Jared Goff, there's Jared Verse. Everything else came after that. But last year, you get Braden Fisk in the second round. We've seen with, you know, Steve Avila in the second round. We've seen them have a lot of success even later than that, whether it's Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp or Kyron Williams. They've just had so many different players. They're not just guys that make the team or guys that even just play a little bit, but guys that are starters, guys that, you know, in Puka Nacua's case are stars. Cooper Kupp case is a star. So that just because it's not a pick that's in primetime TV on a Thursday night doesn't mean they're not going to find a really good player. And I have a ton of faith in them. And oh, by the way, look at what they've done in free agency, undrafted free agents. I mean, their starting left tackle, who they just gave a contract to, is a guy that they signed off the street, that was undrafted. So they're finding good players a lot of different ways. Just because they didn't pick in the first round doesn't mean they won't do well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they were able to do a lot of work in free agency. They didn't put themselves in a position where they had to fill holes in the draft. So that's a fantastic point. But coming up next, we'll continue to break down the Rams trade. Also, we'll hear what Les Snead and Sean McVay had to say about making the deal. But that is coming up next on Locked On Rams.
As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5, right? You're always on the clock. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. So that's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and most importantly, get qualified candidates all in one place. So here's how it works. You post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder that 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. And that's what you're looking for. Not to fill the job, but to fill the job with the right person. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. Cannot thank you enough. You guys are new to the channel, see a lot of new viewers, a lot of new listeners. Now's the time to join that Everyday Listeners Club. The Rams are all in on a Super Bowl in 2025. 2026 will be after the top quarterback in the draft. So lock into your Los Angeles Rams and never miss an episode by joining that Every Listeners Club. All right, Travis. So yeah, some reaction out there from this trade. NFL insider Jordan Schultz, he tweeted out reaction by one source to Falcons trading a future first to come back in, quote, WTF in all caps. So the reaction really from fans, from insiders around the league is really that the Rams kind of finessed the Falcons a little bit. They kind of got the best deal out of this just because of what they're willing to trade to go up and get Pierce. So, hey, you never know what he's going to do and how he's going to pan out as a player, but the Rams certainly feel like that first-round pick was extremely valuable, and Les Snead, he said it was big. He said it was big, and he also kind of talked about, hey, we're going to come away with some good football players tomorrow, and Les Snead and Sean McVay really seemed like they were thrilled about it. I mean, McVay said, I think looking at where our team is overall and the value that we were able to get, able to move back just 20 spots, felt like it was too good to pass up. We're going to come away with some good football players tomorrow for sure. So they clearly have their eyes on certain guys that they feel like are going to have a similar impact to whoever they got at 26.
Well, I it's funny because we're always going to react to this stuff in real time. We're going to react to a trade or a pick or whatever and try to instantly decide whether or not it was the right move or whether they paid too much or whether somebody got fleeced or whatever it is. Fact of the matter is, a lot of this stuff we're not going to have any idea until these guys start to play, until we see who the Rams take next year with that extra pick or what they flip that extra pick for. And what does that turn into? What is the player that the Falcons picked at 26? What does he turn into? That so much of this, because if I use this as an example, last year when Braden Fisk got picked in the second round, a lot of people, whoa, the Rams really paid a high price to go up and make that move. Well, okay, did it work? Yeah. I mean, he was terrific. He was a great player, and it feels like he's going to be a very good player for a long time. So it feels like not only not an overpay, but probably a really smart, value pick that they were able to do with Fisk. We're not going to know until if Braden Fisk had come in and been a dud. It's like, whoa, the Rams really tricked that off, and you got to let it play out a little bit. And both the Rams, I like what they did. I think it gives you the ultimate in the draft, and especially in a draft like this where there aren't a ton of heavyweights. Give me as many options as you can. Give me as many swings at it as you can. Give me as many bites as the apple as you can. And I like that strategy, but giving yourself options, I think, is always a really smart way to do it. But before we pile on Atlanta or say that the Rams, made the ultimate move, we got to see whether these guys are any good or not. And if the guy turns out to be a great player, then the Falcons made a great move. If he didn't, then they were knuckleheads, and we're not going to know for a while.
Yeah, it's a great point. And Sean McVay actually mentioned Braden Fisk when talking about getting this deal done. McVay said that the Falcons and their pursuit of the player that they wanted was, quote, no different than us really wanting to go up for Fisk last year.
Yeah.
Those point charts are out the window when you have a real appreciation for a player. They clearly had that. It aligned for us. So, hey, it was no different than the Rams going up for Braden Fisk, except it was even a higher draft capital because you had to go higher in the first round. But yeah, I think when you also kind of look at this and you look at what the Rams ultimately did, all the speculation, throwing out players, cornerbacks, tight ends, offensive linemen, receivers, even some running backs for a lot of draft nicks out there and expert mocks. Well, Sean McVay said we felt going into it, talking even this morning, this was going to be the most likely scenario where we probably weren't going to pick tonight. So in the back of their minds, they knew, hey, it was going to be swing big for a playmaker. Once that didn't happen, it was boom, trade down. It feels like that was plan A to plan B. And we'll give a shout out to Peter Schrager from ESPN, because first of all, he's mentioned listening to Locked On Rams multiple times on Good Morning Football. So shout out to Peter Schrager. But he was the one guy of all the expert mocks. I literally read probably 50, like seriously. He was the one guy that said, no, the Rams are trading back. The Rams are trading back. He said the Rams would be somewhere in the late 30s, early 40s. So shout out to Peter Schrager, mainly because he's a everyday listener, I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, Schrags is great. I love him. He's absolutely terrific. Yeah, look, they knew what they were going to do. If an opportunity presented itself, they would have moved and seized on that opportunity. But I keep coming back. And, the other thing that we can certainly get into at one point, they clearly had no interest in the quarterbacks that were available to them because they were both sitting right there. That's obviously something that they did not think was a value play at that point, whether it was Dart, whether it was Sanders still sitting there for that matter, that these are not guys that they felt were the future of this organization. And I absolutely love it that just because it was there, it's like, well, we're going to need a quarterback. No, that's not our guy. Keep moving. Let's find the guy when it's time to go find our guy. I thought that was really smart, but yeah, this is, like I said, right off the top, this felt exceptionally Rammy. They came in there with their phones on, and if somebody wanted to make a deal, sure, let's find a way to do it. If somebody called them and gave them an opportunity to move way up and do something interesting, like maybe one of those tight ends that you've mentioned a couple of times, sure, we'll do that. But the most likely scenario was the one that played out, which is we'll move back, and we'd rather pick more times in the middle than we would once at the top, and I think it's a pretty good strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of to your point about the quarterbacks, we kind of pick this up in the next segment is that yesterday, kind of the episode I did in the morning was, hey, how do you crush this draft? And one of the 5 things I listed was do not draft a quarterback in this draft, because I don't think the future of this franchise existed with the quarterbacks that were going to be available to them, whether it be a Jackson Dart, a Jalen Milroe, a Jador Sanders, and guys like that, a Shuck, McCord, guys like that. It just never felt like, didn't feel it. I mean, didn't like just the tape didn't say it. It just didn't feel like it was possible.
Yeah.
So I don't think the Rams even entertained that. I think there was a smoke screen about the whole Jackson Dart, the Jalen Milroe, things like that. And hey, what's happened with Jador Sanders is kind of been the story of the draft so far, for being honest. That's why I always find it interesting, when I can find things in common with, it's never a good thing when I find things in common with athletes. Like, for example, like Jador Sanders and I are both not on an NFL team right now. It's never a good thing when I have something in common with these athletes, and that's what's happening to Jador Sanders.
Yeah, you're right about that. It's fascinating. And look, if you just kind of boil it down to its most basic function, I think what the league said is, we don't think he's very good. And it doesn't mean he won't be good. It means that they don't think that it's a slam dunk that he will be good. That it is I got to get that guy, because if I don't, somebody else will, and he's going to come back and be the guy that we have to deal with. It's more of if he's there at the right price, I don't have to be the first one in line to buy that. I can value shop that a little bit, which kind of brings me back to the Rams point at quarterback. if one of those guys that you mentioned a little bit, if those guys are available 5th, 6th round, I think that's when it gets interesting, because that is we can put you in here and we can take some time to evaluate this. We can see you in practice. We can see you in training camp. We can see you in the preseason and get a little sense of what that looks like. And there's zero pressure on the player. It doesn't send any sort of mixed messages to Matthew Stafford or even Jimmy G for that matter, that you can just kind of sit back and wait and evaluate. And look, maybe you catch lightning in a bottle. Maybe there is, a start. Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. They found a starting quarterback in the 7th round of the draft. Tom Brady's the ultimate example of this. He gets drafted in the 6th round and he's Tom Brady. And I'm not saying that any of these guys are that guy, but nobody thought those guys were those guys when they went at that point in the draft. You just don't know. Taking a swing early doesn't make a ton of sense, but just kind of throwing something against the wall and see what happens 5th, 6th, 7th round, I don't hate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And next segment, we're going to talk about what the Rams could do in the 2nd round, and we'll pick up the conversation on the quarterback situation. I kind of want to get Travis's thoughts on what they could do with that 1st round pick, and if it is an indication that they're all in on the quarterbacks in 2026. Yeah. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
The NBA playoffs are here. They're going down. Lakers in an absolute dogfight with the Timberwolves. The Clippers are getting ready to blow out the Nuggets. And FanDuel is giving you, the new customer, an incredible way to get in on all of this. Because right now, when you join FanDuel and you place your first $5 bet, just $5, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if you hit on that first $5 bet. And it is terrific because it is so easy. FanDuel makes betting super easy, whether it's just picking your favorite team or, I love this, little bit of player props, right? We're talking 3-pointers. We're talking steals, assists. FanDuel has so many different ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game starts and you think, I missed it. No, you're good. You can even combine live prop bets into a same game parlay for a chance to win even bigger. So don't miss out. Go do it right now. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. And by the way, you got hockey playoffs too. The Kings are flying around. Game 3 with Edmonton coming out. Go do it all at FanDuel.com.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, Travis, so they got a couple first-round picks now in 2026. And the beautiful thing is you can be flexible. You can be fluid. It's not a guarantee it goes to one thing or the other. You could even get 2 really good players in the first round, even if it's not a quarterback. 2 quality first-round picks. If you want to go that route, you can use it in the season to get a player. You can use it in the offseason to make a move. You can try to stockpile picks and include another first to trade up for a Arch Manning type. We kind of broke down what it would take, comparing that to the Jared Goff move and the RG3 move, the Robert Griffin III move. But what is your sense of what they do with that pick? Does it feel to you like they're all in on the 2026 quarterback market in the draft like it feels to me?
I don't know. I think the great wild card in this is, how does Matthew Stafford look, right? Like here we are, we're getting ready for the 2025 season, and Matthew Stafford is still a really good NFL quarterback. He really has never indicated that he's looking to, we've never gotten the, hey, this is my last ride. Hey, one more time. And I understand he's expensive, but let's say they go out there and they're really good again. Let's say they go out there and he is really good again. The team's really good again. And you get a chance to do some, you're going to run it back, right? I mean, you would think to go in a different direction after another successful season would be interesting, but also the flip, maybe you're just like, that's the perfect time to do it. I think a lot of it has to do with how Stafford does. I think that you look at some of the other things that they're going to need. Rob Havenstein is getting up there. You're going to need another tackle. Tackles are always difficult to find in the draft. They go really quick. You need some assets to take some tackles. That could be an area that you need. Kyron Williams' deal is coming up. So maybe, I would never take a running back super high in the draft unless there's another Saquon Barkley out there or something like that. But they have some areas of need, but quarterback is the sexiest of them all. And because there's a guy named Manning in the draft, that's always something that, here we are, the day 2 of the 2025 draft, and we're already looking forward to the 2026 draft, and Manning's name will be said every day between now and then. I think quarterback is near the top, but it's certainly not the only thing that they need to do.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Manning, I mean, this is a guy who really hasn't had a ton of experience at Texas, right? I mean, less than 100 reps, hasn't thrown for 1,000 yards, things like that. But I think if you've seen the flashes and the highlights, I mean, he's not a Lamar Jackson 4.3 type of guy, but he's a 4.6 guy. Les Snead has already talked about how a running quarterback, a mobile quarterback is like a cheat code. And the truth of the matter is, we've talked about on the show a lot of times that you just aren't finding those elite quarterbacks in free agency. It's very rare that you can get them via trade. And I just think that, look, I mean, this organization learned with Jared Goff that really good does not win you a Super Bowl. Elite wins you a Super Bowl, right? I mean, a Pro Bowl arm, yeah, sure, but Matthew Stafford was an all-time great arm, and that's what won the Super Bowl. And I think they kind of view the quarterback position like that moving forward.
Everything needs to be 10 out of 10 if your quarterback isn't 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
If your quarterback is 10 out of 10, then you can have some 6s and 7s in other places and survive and maybe even thrive. But if that quarterback is the 6 or the 7 in the group, you're basically asking for everyone else on your team to throw a perfect game, and that doesn't happen very often. It just puts an incredible amount of pressure on the rest of your roster. I think they know that. I think that's why they did what they did to go get Matthew Stafford. I think that's why every team in the league, and especially the really good ones, and I think that the Rams are one of the really good ones, not just in results, but in the way that they view these things. They're always looking for a chance to get better at a spot. They're always looking and making hard. Look, let's put it to you this way. Cooper Kupp's a Seattle Seahawk, right? When they think it's time to make a move, they will make a move. They are not going to get too caught up in the emotion of it all. And so whether that's Stafford or somebody else, I think that they will move when the time is right. And now that they've got some options with picks and flexibility, maybe it is next year. Maybe it is, or maybe they kick the can down the road for another year too, and they have a guy that's a sophomore in college right now that they're saying that's going to be our guy. I trust him to make the right choice.
Absolutely, but the war chest has been filled up with a major piece. Now, as far as what they could do today, the Rams did kind of show their cards a little bit by looking to trade up for Ted McMillan. So if you do go receiver today, got Luther Burden out of Missouri. Will he last to 46? My guess would be no, but we'll see. Jaden Higgins, another guy. Jalen Noel, Iowa State guys. Eric Iomanner from Stanford. Trey Harris, a receiver out of Ole Miss, who we've talked about on this show. He's got a lot of high upside potential. Could go receiver. The interesting one, of course, is if you're looking to add a cornerback, I mean, everything that's happened to Will Johnson. I mean, Will Johnson wasn't able to run his 40 at his pro day. He dropped. He at one point was considered to be a lock to be a top 10 to 15 pick. So you could go that route. So receiver, cornerback. But what I hope they go receiver. I really do. I mean, I think now we're kind of in the skilled possession, the skilled players. And I think that's kind of hopefully the route that they go today.
I wouldn't hate it if that's what they did. I think that would be a smart thing to do. It would make a lot of sense. It would be exciting to talk about a wide receiver because those are guys that, touch the football and everything that comes along with that. But I think I would flip-flop the two things that you just said. I think that receiver would be my second choice and going for a corner would be my first choice. I also like if there's an offensive lineman that you think you might be able to develop, I think that could be an interesting selection as well, because anybody that's listening to Locked On Rams, any one of our everydayers, is if your offensive line is good, you got a pretty good chance. If your offensive line is bad, you have no chance. And right now, the Rams offensive line's pretty good, but it's pretty thin. I don't know how much depth they have, especially at tackle. So I wouldn't hate them going to an O-line pick either.
Yeah, and cornerback-wise, I mean, Trey Amos out of Ole Miss, Siobhan Revel Jr. out of East Carolina. By the way, East Carolina, one of the most underrated uniform sets and logos in college football. The Pirates, I mean, that's let's be honest, that's pretty fire.
Pretty good.
Right?
They got a good baseball program, too. They got good baseball gear, too.
Yeah, no, the baseball stuff is super clean, no doubt about it. But other guys that you could see available, I mean, the cornerback spot, just talking about that, I mean, Will Johnson, that's going to be interesting. That's going to be really the storyline today, along with Jador Sanders. Another guy, too, if you do want to go linebacker, if you do want to kind of go that route, I mean, Carson Schwessinger out of UCLA. I mean, going from...
I knew it was just a matter of time. I knew he'd get a
go for a walk-on. Come on, man. It's a great story. He looks like he looks like a Ram. He looks like, that would honestly be my pick, let's be honest. But no, I go wide receiver, I go corner. There's quality, man. I mean, that's what, you look at this, and there's a lot of quality. I mean, there's still a lot of Ohio State guys, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, JT Tuimoloau. It's going to be fascinating to see who they pick up today. And what, just kind of like, I guess, non-Rams, but Jador Sanders was linked to the Rams a lot. And clearly the Rams were never interested, but man, that was a tough situation. I mean, I kind of feel bad for Jador in the sense that you had that big party, you had to address everyone saying we know that this should happen, all that stuff.
That's a drag.
What's your take on that?
To get, embarrassed might be a strong word, but to just have a day that didn't go the way that you were hoping it would go would be difficult for anybody. But look, here's the good thing about the draft. Here's the good thing about playing in the NFL. No one's going to care where anybody got picked if he goes out there and balls out. If he goes out there and becomes a good player and he gets picked behind Jackson Dart, okay, great. We got the better player. If he goes out there and Cam Ward face plants in Tennessee and Shedeur becomes an all-pro, he can go prove everybody wrong. It doesn't lock anybody into anything. He's got lots of opportunities to go make it right. For me, with Shedeur specifically, it's that the league very, very, very clearly did not think he was a first-round talent. Now, it doesn't mean that he is. That doesn't mean he won't be good. But what that means is the stuff that they look at, and that includes football stuff and non-football stuff. They said,
did you see that thing, Travis, where they said, "Oh, his teammates didn't attend his birthday party"?
Dude, that's from Draft Day, that Costner movie. That's the same, storyline. Look, it's a very specific flavor of ice cream with Shedeur Sanders, right? I mean, you're getting a Sanders, and that means something. And look, Deion was a Sanders, and I'd take him on my team. And the difference is that Deion was an unbelievably freakish athlete and brought that to his team, and Shedeur isn't that. But we'll see. He's got a chance. I kind of like the guy. I like a guy that's kind of out there and saying wild stuff and doing stuff and wildly confident like that. So I'm kind of pulling for him a lot. I don't know if I'd want him to be the quarterback of my team, but I want him in the league and I want him playing. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, shout out to Vontae Mack from Draft Day for sure. But yeah, I mean, this is getting to the point with Jador Sanders where it's kind of like his origin story now, the fuel to his fire, like he said. But yeah, I mean, if he does get picked tonight, I mean, in TV ratings, they say Friday night is the Friday night death slot.
Yeah.
TV rating. So he's not prime time. He's a Friday night death slot. If he gets picked from 8 to 11 Eastern, that's hey, you're about to get canceled on TV. So I kind of hope for his case that he doesn't.
Well, you got, especially out here, right? You got the Dodgers, you've got the Kings, you've got the Lakers. I don't know how much draft coverage there's going to be in Los Angeles. There's a lot of other things going on tonight.
It's a really, really good point. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.